It is December 23rd, 2025. And if you are planning on traveling anywhere in the United States over the next week or so, or honestly, if you live anywhere between Seattle and Miami, you really, really have to listen to this forecast immediately.
Yeah, that's right. We're sitting on the precipice of what looks to be the busiest holiday travel period in recorded history.
And the weather map is it's split right down the middle with chaos and extremes.
Absolutely. This forecast has some, incredibly far-reaching impacts across the whole country for everyone this holiday season.
Especially if you're going to be traveling. Welcome to Meteorology Matters, the podcast that dives deep into the science, chaos, and stories behind the weather that shapes our world. This show was created by meteorologist Rob Jones. Now let's get into today's episode of Meteorology Matters.
We are truly grappling with an extraordinary atmospheric split right now. It's almost a textbook case of weather divergence.
Textbook case, yeah.
On the western half of the continent, you've got this monster high-impact storm system just bearing down on the entire Pacific coast and the Rockies. It's bringing historic moisture, extreme wind, and a very serious life-threatening flood risk.
And then at the exact same time,
Simultaneously, on the eastern half, stretching all the way from the plains to the eastern seaboard, we have a massive unseasonal heat dome. It's just dominating the center of the country. And it's poised to smash dozens of high-temperature records.
so for millions, it's going to be a white-hot Christmas.
That's the perfect term for it.
It is the great weather divergence of the 2025 holidays. And it means travelers are fighting two wildly different high-impact battles. Whether you are dodging rock slides in California or, sweating through an 80-degree Christmas in Texas, you need to understand not just what is driving this, but why it is so dangerous when it collides with these record holiday crowds. Let's start where the immediate danger is highest. I think where the atmospheric drama is the most intense, and that is definitely the West Coast.
Without a doubt.
California, the Pacific Northwest, the Rockies. They're all facing significant travel hazards, kicking off Tuesday night and lasting right through Christmas Day and the weekend.
And this isn't just, typical winter rain. Not by a long shot.
No.
You're absolutely right. This is a massive moisture event. The meteorological community refers to it as an atmospheric river.
Right.
And for those who might be unfamiliar, you should really think of it as a river of water vapor, high up in the atmosphere. It's often nicknamed the Pineapple Express because it draws that deep tropical moisture right out of the Pacific.
And this one is aimed, straight at the California coast?
Like a fire hose, straight toward California.
So we've heard the term atmospheric river a lot recently. What makes this particular system so powerful? How are forecasters quantifying this danger?
It's really the sheer volume and the speed of the moisture transport. This is not a weak system that's just going to generate some steady drizzle. For the Bay Area, the intensity is forecast to be, it's quite significant. Forecasters are using highly technical language, things like high-end strong to low-end extreme intensity.
Okay, so let's translate that jargon for the traveler. What does high-end strong to low-end extreme actually mean for someone trying to get home for Christmas?
It means the water is coming in so fast that normal storm drains and creek beds, they just can't handle the volume. High and strong means you're going to see significant regional impacts. Localized flooding, debris flows.
And low-end extreme, that sounds like a whole other level.
It is. When they use that phrase, it signals the potential for major widespread impacts. Things that can lead to infrastructure failures, multi-day road closures, and life-threatening flash floods. We are talking about a powerful influx of water vapor, carrying the equivalent of several Mississippi rivers worth of moisture.
Wow.
And it's aimed directly at populated coastal and mountainous areas.
And the timing just couldn't be worse. It's a multi-wave event hitting right at peak travel. So when exactly should people be adjusting their plans?
The initial arrival begins Tuesday night, but the most significant high-impact period for California is concentrated from Tuesday night right through Thursday.
So right through Christmas Eve and into Christmas morning.
Unfortunately, yes. That chaotic weather is going to continue right into Christmas Day, and the hazards are multifaceted. You've got heavy valley rain at low elevations, which causes urban flooding. Then you have extremely heavy mountain snow higher up, which will cause road closures.
And wind.
And widespread high winds, absolutely. Knocking out power, making driving nearly impossible. And critically, this system doesn't just stop at the coast. It spreads eastward into the Northwest, the Great Basin, the Desert Southwest, and severely impacting holiday skiers in the Rockies. It will just arrive there slightly later.
Okay, let's zoom in on Southern California because the flooding risk there looks truly terrifying. especially for Christmas Eve. The National Weather Service has issued an excessive rainfall warning, and I saw they've upgraded it to a high risk for flash flooding. This isn't a drill.
That high-risk designation is the absolute highest category on the scale, and it is extremely serious. It's focused specifically on areas just north of the city of Los Angeles. So you're talking about densely populated communities like Burbank, Altadena, Glendale, San Bernardino, Santa Clarita, and Thousand Oaks.
So when forecasters with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Los Angeles elevate the threat to high risk, what are they signaling?
They're signaling a rare scenario where destructive flooding is both likely and widespread.
What specifically are the NOAA forecasters highlighting as the primary dangers in these zones? What should people be looking out for?
They're warning of three primary dangers that travelers and residents absolutely must heed. First, significant and widespread urban roadway flooding.
So this isn't just puddles.
No, this isn't just standing water. We're talking about major arteries, underpasses, and streets becoming completely impassable, potentially sweeping cars away. This is just a nightmarish scenario during peak travel, particularly as people are rushing home on Christmas Eve.
Okay, what's the second danger?
Second, and this is perhaps the most dangerous, for those who live near hillsides, there's a high risk of major rock slides, mudslides, and debris flow.
Especially in the burn score areas, I imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in areas that have experienced wildfires in recent years. The ground there is stripped of vegetation, and it just can't absorb the water. The water runs off immediately, carrying tons of mud and rock down the canyons. It makes travel exceptionally dangerous, particularly on mountain passes like those leading into the Angeles National Forest.
And the third danger?
Rapid rises in creeks, streams, and rivers. They anticipate these flows will swell so rapidly that it will likely require swift water rescues. And we have to pause here and acknowledge the real-world danger. We have already seen the tragic result of this type of system, with a fatality over the weekend up in Redding. One person died after being stranded in their car during previous flooding.
That's just a tragic reminder.
It is. A moving body of water just 6 inches deep can sweep an adult off their feet. 2 feet can float an SUV. This high-risk warning is basically a plea to stay indoors.
That urgency really needs to be heard loud and clear. What are the people on the ground, I mean, the California Highway Patrol, what are they advising travelers right now?
Their advice is unambiguous and it's critical. If you do not absolutely need to be on the roads, you should stay off the streets and freeways from Tuesday night through Christmas Day.
Just stay home.
Just stay home. The CHP cites the frequency of crashes involving center dividers and drivers losing control in strong rain as the main reason. When visibility drops to near zero and you hit a patch of standing water at speed, hydroplaning is instant.
It's a life safety issue, not just an inconvenience.
Exactly. It's not a delay issue. The storm makes driving conditions exceptionally hazardous, and the risk of being caught in a slide or flood is simply too high to ignore.
The storm sounds catastrophic enough just listing the flooding and the slides, but you mentioned an almost unbelievable element to this forecast, the rare threat of tornadoes and waterspouts. In California, in December, how does that happen?
This is truly extraordinary, and it really speaks to the volatile energy that's embedded within this atmospheric river. Now, while late December is technically the heart of California's modern tornado season, the state averages about 9 per year, mostly brief coastal winter events. This specific alignment of atmospheric conditions is setting the stage for potential waterspouts and brief tornadoes along the coast. And not just for one day, from Tuesday night right through Friday.
A 4-day window? That seems unprecedented for that region.
It's very, very unusual.
So what's the atmospheric recipe that creates this kind of instability over California?
It all comes down to the deep dynamics of the incoming trough. The system is pulling in not just moisture, but also warm, unstable air well ahead of the cold front. Then, as that cold front sweeps through, it provides intense lift and wind shear. That's the change in wind speed and direction with height, and that is the engine for rotation.
So you need that contrast between the air masses.
You absolutely do, and that is exactly what this intense Pacific storm is providing.
I saw a quote from Daniel Swain, a climate scientist at UC Agriculture and Natural Resources, and he said this is the most favorable setup for more than a couple waterspouts brief tornadoes he's seen in quite some time. Why is that specific phrasing so important?
It speaks to the confidence in the ingredients. Forecasters aren't just seeing a general possibility, they are seeing multiple elements align perfectly. The National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center was so confident in the potential for these cells that they placed San Francisco in a rare marginal risk for severe thunderstorms 3 days in advance.
3 days out for San Francisco. That's a huge move.
A huge move. We're talking about the first time the agency had reportedly done that for the city in at least a decade. They just don't take that step unless they see a high degree of certainty in the shear and instability, even if the overall probability remains low.
So where exactly is the highest risk concentrated, and when should people be most vigilant?
The risk comes in multiple ways, which is what makes it so persistent. The initial coastal threat runs from Crescent City in Del Norte County all the way down to Santa Barbara. That kicks off Tuesday night as the cold front approaches.
And then it moves inland.
That threat expands toward Los Angeles on Wednesday as the line of storms moves eastward. It'll bring with it heavy downpours and erratic, potentially rotating winds. Coastal areas are most likely to see waterspouts come ashore and briefly become, land spouts.
But what about inland? The Central Valley.
Right, there is a crucial window for the Central Valley. Wednesday afternoon presents the highest risk for severe thunderstorms inland. The peak tornado risk runs from roughly Chico down to Fresno.
And why there, specifically?
It's because the Central Valley is flatter and warmer, and if we get any breaks in the clouds that allow for even brief sunshine, that solar heating provides the necessary instability right at the surface to fuel stronger storms.
Let's be realistic about the severity here. The overall risk for any one person is low, but the implications are high if it does happen. What's the actual likelihood for any single location?
The overall risk is low for any single point. We're looking at about a 2 to 5% chance of a tornado within 25 miles on Wednesday.
Okay.
But again, the fact that the threat is persistent, multi-day, and covers such a wide geographic area is what makes it dangerous for travelers moving across the state. Even brief, weak tornadoes can cause damage. Flip RVs or down trees onto roads.
And what are the accompanying hazards? It's not just tornadoes, right?
No. Alongside the potential funnel clouds, the National Weather Service is also warning of quarter-size hail, which is extremely rare for a California winter, storm-damaging straight-line wind gusts and frequent cloud-to-ground lightning. So while the flooding and the non-tornadic winds pose a greater overall risk to the most travelers, this tornado threat adds a highly volatile and unpredictable element to the forecast this week.
While the valleys are drowning and the coast is dodging water spouts, the mountains are going to be absolutely hammered with snow, which is, I guess, a mixed blessing right before a major ski holiday. What are the forecasts showing for the Sierra Nevada?
The Sierra Nevada is expected to see what forecasters are calling a prolonged heavy snow event.
Which is good for the snowpack, long term.
Oh, this is exactly what the California snowpack needs for long-term water resources. The projections suggest a solid 3 to 6 foot snow event for the High Sierra, and localized totals could be even higher at the highest peaks.
3 to 6 feet.
And the water content is just staggering. When you look at the liquid equivalent, the amount of water this system is carrying, we were talking about totals exceeding 15 to 20 inches in the high terrain of Northern California.
That sounds fantastic for the spring water supply, but absolutely disastrous for anyone trying to travel.
Precisely. This means road closures, likely for several days, along critical arteries like Highway 50 and Interstate 80 over Donner Pass. We're talking about blizzard-like conditions, whiteouts, and conditions treacherous enough that the California Highway Patrol will impose strict chain controls. Travel will be almost impossible.
Especially through Christmas Day and the day after?
Absolutely. If you haven't crossed the Sierra by Tuesday afternoon, you are likely stuck until Friday or Saturday.
How does that compare to the Rockies, say in Utah? I know they've been struggling with unusual warmth and limited snow recently, which led to some event cancellations.
Yeah, Utah presents a very complicated picture for skiers. It really demonstrates the difficult, schizophrenic nature of this storm. The multi-day Christmas storm is hitting the Wasatch Range, but it starts warm.
Starts warm with rain.
With rain. Rain is actually forecast to push up near 10,000 feet on Christmas Eve. That warm rain at high elevations is catastrophic for the existing snow base. It compacts it, melts it, and turns it into concrete.
And this is after they already had to move the Deer Valley World Cup event.
Exactly. This follows that general trend of warm weather and limited snow that already forced those prestigious events to be moved to the East Coast due to insufficient base.
So anyone flying into Salt Lake City hoping for a white Christmas ski trip is going to be disappointed, at least initially.
Disappointed, and likely dealing with a very messy mix of rain and slush at mid-mountain. However, There is a silver lining later in the forecast as the pattern breaks.
Oh.
Much colder air is expected to finally arrive Friday into Saturday after that initial warm pulse moves through and dumps its liquid. When that deep cold finally settles in, the Wasatch Range, the areas around Park City and Stobart, gets a legitimate shot at accumulating 8 to 16 inches of fresh, dry, skiable snow.
So if you're traveling to Utah, the beginning of the week is messy and warm, but the end of the week and the following weekend should be much better.
Much better, colder, true winter conditions. You just have to survive the initial deluge.
All right, let's pivot now to the exact opposite problem dominating the majority of the map. If the West is dealing with a major, potentially catastrophic winter storm, the central and eastern U.S. are having anything but. It is a full-on heat wave, which sounds absolutely unbelievable for late December.
It does.
We're talking about people potentially needing air conditioning to enjoy Christmas dinner.
It's the great meteorological irony of this holiday season. Forget about a traditional white Christmas across most of the continental U.S. Much of America will experience a white-hot Christmas. Forecasters are projecting that Christmas 2025 will rank as one of the warmest on record across a massive swath of the country, stretching from the high plains all the way to the Atlantic coast. And this isn't just mild either. We're looking at temperatures that are going to shatter previous high marks set decades ago.
Let's put some specific numbers on this. Where exactly will travelers and residents be sweating while opening gifts?
The records are falling across a wide, geographically diverse area. For Christmas Day, December 25th, Dallas is expected to hit a high of 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
80 degrees
Yeah.
in Dallas on Christmas.
Which would break the recent record set just back in 2021. But it's not just Dallas. Lawton, Oklahoma is also forecast for 80 degrees on Christmas Day. That would shatter their previous record of 76 from 2021.
And it's not just Christmas Day, right? This lasts for a few days.
It does. Boonville, Arkansas, and Oklahoma City are expected to hit similar highs around 80 on Christmas Day and the following day, December 26. I mean, think about that. 80 degrees on December 26 in Oklahoma.
That feels less like winter and more like a premature spring day. And this heat is pushing far north and east, too.
It is. Even cities much further north than inland are affected.
Yeah.
Denver, Colorado, has a potential high of 69 degrees on Christmas Day.
Which is a record.
It ties or breaks a record that stood since 2005. Pueblo, Colorado, could hit 71, breaking a record set way back in 1971.
Wow, 1971.
And even into the southeast, places like Macon, Georgia, are looking at a potential high of 77 on Christmas Day. When you look at the data for the full week, dozens of locations from Texas to the Mid-Atlantic are forecast to see high temperatures in the upper 70s or low 80s.
So the U.S. is effectively running the air conditioning for the holidays.
In many places, yes.
To put this incredible, pervasive warmth into context, let's look specifically at Colorado. It's an interesting case because it's seeing a record high one day and then maybe snow the next. It really embodies this year's climate extremes. How does this late December warmth fit into the larger climate picture of 2025 for that state?
Colorado serves as a crucial microcosm for the accelerating warming trend we are seeing globally. The data confirms that 2025 was one of the warmest ever years in Colorado. Through November, it ranked as the 9th warmest year overall in the 131 years of recorded weather data they possess.
9th warmest. But the real story is the acceleration, isn't it?
It's the acceleration. State climatologist Russ Schumacher pointed out that 8 out of the 10 warmest years in Colorado have occurred since 2012.
Wait, say that again. 8 of the 10 warmest years have happened since 2012. That's a stunning acceleration. That's not a gradual, gentle trend anymore.
It speaks to the consistent underlying warming driven by climate change that researchers are, quite clear about. The warmer baseline air makes these specific record-shattering events much easier to achieve.
It's a shorter leap to get to a record high.
Exactly. If the average December high starts at 40 degrees, getting to 70 is a massive leap. If the new baseline is 50, getting to 70 is much simpler for a strong, high-pressure system to manage.
And 2025 in Colorado wasn't just warm, it was marked by volatility, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The year was marked by truly stunning heat extremes earlier. Denver hit a record high of 83 degrees on November 11th. That broke the all-time record high for the entire month.
83 in November.
And over the summer, we saw the hottest day of the year on August 7th, when both Los Alamos and Lamar topped out at 109 degrees.
And this volatility extends to moisture too, right? This split personality.
It does. While the west side of the state experienced ongoing long-term drought, the east side saw record-high rainfall and intense flash flooding. We had the wettest day in Denver on August 10th, with nearly 1.5 inches of rain, but the highest one-day precipitation statewide was over 5 inches at Walsh on August 30th. That led to catastrophic local flooding. So this split precipitation pattern, coupled with the consistent warmth, really defines the chaotic volatility of the year for Colorado.
And it mirrors the national split we are discussing right now. Okay, so we have floods, slides, and storms in the West, and records being obliterated by this incredible heat in the central and eastern U.S. What is the fundamental mechanism linking these two extreme and contrasting patterns? How does the West Coast storm cause the East Coast heat?
The systems are inextricably linked. It's all about the position and the behavior of the jet stream, which is, essentially the fast-moving river of air high up that dictates where storms go.
Like a garden hose.
Think of it like a garden hose, exactly. Normally it flows relatively straight, but right now it is performing a massive lazy wave across the North American continent.
A wave?
And the atmospheric rivers that are drenching California are riding the first part of that lazy wave, a dramatic deep dip in the jet stream near the West Coast. That dip allows the storm to pull immense moisture from the tropical Pacific.
Okay.
But this energy transfer doesn't just stop at the coast. As the jet stream recovers from that massive southward plunge, it snaps back northward and forms a corresponding large, strong ridge of high pressure.
So the dip creates the storm in the west, and the snapback ridge creates the heat in the east.
You've got it.
Yeah.
That high-pressure ridge, anchored over the Gulf of Mexico, it acts like a warm air pump that just won't turn off. It is sending vast amounts of warm air north and east, dominating the central and eastern states.
Yeah.
And crucially, it's preventing any intrusion of Arctic air from Canada from settling in for the holidays.
It's like a shield.
It's a massive shield. And the contrast you see, the extreme rainfall in LA and the 80-degree temperatures in Dallas, is all being orchestrated by this dramatic, amplified jet stream pattern. It's effectively a continental-scale atmospheric seesaw.
This pattern feels like it goes beyond just normal winter variability. You mentioned earlier that researchers have been working hard to link specific events to long-term climate trends. Is there concrete research linking this December warm event to human-caused climate change?
Yes, there is some crucial early research that speaks directly to this. The research group Climate Central, which focuses on rapid attribution techniques, has released some early findings regarding this specific December warm event. They suggest that this highly amplified high-pressure setup and the resulting warm temperatures are at least 2 to 3 times more likely to occur due to human-caused carbon pollution.
Let's unpack that 2 to 3 times more likely finding for a minute. What does that mean in practical terms? It doesn't mean climate change caused the weather, right? It amplified it.
Right. It means that the ingredients for a warm December blast are natural. But the intensity and the extent of this warming event are being boosted significantly by the underlying change in the planet's thermodynamics. Since the global baseline temperature is higher now than it was 50 years ago, it takes less energy for a high-pressure system to push the thermometer up to 80 degrees. The background air starts warmer, making the records easier to break.
And the warming is more pervasive across the continent.
Exactly. This link between the high-pressure ridge, the amplified jet stream, and the climate change signal is why this specific pattern is so important to understand.
That powerful linkage between the West's storms and the East's heat brings us to the broader seasonal context. This chaotic immediate weather is deeply rooted in the larger climate dynamics governed by the Pacific Ocean. Let's talk about the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, and its current state.
Right. ENSO, for short, is the recurring pattern of temperature shifts in the tropical Pacific Ocean that affects global weather patterns. It has 2 main phases, El Niño, which is the warm phase, and La Niña, which is the cool phase. What we are dealing with right now and what's driving this volatility is a La Niña winter.
For listeners who may not track these cycles closely, how do we define La Niña, and why does a subtle change in Pacific Ocean water temperature have such massive effects on a U.S. Christmas forecast?
Well, La Niña is characterized by cooler-than-average sea surface temperatures across the central and eastern tropical Pacific. And it matters enormously because the ocean temperature influences the atmosphere above it. Specifically, it changes the placement and strength of the jet stream, that river of air we just discussed.
Okay.
In a La Niña pattern, the jet stream tends to buckle, favoring a storm track that is wetter and colder across the northern tier of the U.S. and warmer and drier across the southern tier. It sets the stage for exactly the extreme divide we're seeing this holiday week.
So what's the current guidance from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration on how long this cool phase is expected to last?
The Climate Prediction Center within NOAA has confirmed that La Nina conditions are currently present, and they are strongly favored to persist through the peak winter months, specifically through December 2025 and February 2026.
So through the whole winter.
But they are also signaling a likely transition to ENSO-neutral conditions by late winter or early spring in 2026. They assign it a 55% chance of transitioning during the January through March period.
So while La Nina is driving the initial chaos of winter, we could see a shift toward more variable, less predictable conditions later on.
That's the idea, yes.
So if the current weather divergence is an amplification of the La Nina pattern, what does a typical La Nina winter December through February mean for the rest of the U.S.? How long can travelers expect this massive temperature split to last?
The current pattern is essentially La Nina at maximum volume.
Yeah.
Generally, it results in a clear temperature split that lasts for months.
Let's start with temperature.
Okay, first, temperature. Warmer than average temperatures are strongly favored across the entire southern tier, stretching up the eastern seaboard and even northern Alaska. The strongest probabilities for this persistent, unseasonal warmth are in the southwest U.S. and most of Florida.
Good for vacationers, I suppose.
It is, but conversely, cooler than average temperatures are slightly favored in the northern tier, specifically from the Pacific Northwest across Montana, North Dakota, and into northern Minnesota.
So the north is colder and wetter, and the south is warmer and drier. That sounds like it reinforces the pattern for the West Coast storms we just talked about.
It does, and that brings us to the precipitation split. Wetter than average conditions are most likely over Montana, the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Plains, the Great Lakes region, and the Ohio River Valley. They're going to see the primary storm track focus there, which is why the Pacific Northwest is getting consistent moisture.
And in contrast,
In stark contrast, drier than average conditions are most likely across the southern tier states: Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the far southeast U.S. This aligns perfectly with that massive high-pressure ridge and the warm air pump we discussed earlier. And this is where the long-term concerns really rise.
that drier forecast for the southern tier has significant long-term implications for water resources and the ongoing drought crises. Particularly in the Southwest, what's the outlook showing there?
Yeah, the seasonal outlook, which covers October 2025 through January 2026, is quite grim regarding drought relief. Drought is expected to persist across the Southwest, the Deep South, and portions of the Northeast.
And it might get worse in some places.
Yes, forecasters are warning of the likely development of new drought conditions across the south-central states, a serious concern for agriculture and water utilities there that have managed to hold on so far.
Let's focus on the Colorado River Basin crunch for a moment. How much does La Nina exacerbate that specific problem, which affects, 40 million people?
The Southwest California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah is the most consistently vulnerable region under a La Nina pattern. The cool phase increases the chance of below-average precipitation here by over 50%. It makes consistent dry spells much more probable for the mountain ranges that feed the Colorado River.
And they rely on that winter snowpack.
Heavily. This is highly relevant when considering the ongoing water crunch in the Colorado River Basin. We know that major cities like Denver and Phoenix are already scrambling to future-proof their water supplies. Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at chronically low levels. A persistent La Nina pattern means the hope for a miracle March or a massive snowpack recovery is diminished throughout the winter season.
So water shortages will likely continue to deepen in 2026.
It seems very likely, yes.
That's a profound long-term impact coming from the same climate dynamic that gives us 80-degree Christmas days. You also mentioned specific warnings for the far southeast, like Florida. What are the concerns there beyond just being too warm?
Since the La Nina pattern favors those warmer and drier conditions for the southern U.S. overall, this creates increased climatic variability and a heightened wildfire risk in regions that aren't accustomed to it in winter.
Wildfire risk in winter.
Right. Forecasters have already warned Florida agriculture officials to prepare for increased wildfire potential due to these drier and warmer conditions persisting throughout the winter months. So while the absence of cold is a relief for travelers, the increased risk of dryness and fire poses a serious threat to regional stability in agriculture.
This meteorological division, severe flood and tornado risk in the west, record heat in the middle, and a persistent drought threat in the south is colliding head-on with the biggest travel period ever recorded. It's a logistical nightmare. Let's look at the travel volume first.
The sheer number of travelers is staggering, and it underscores why this forecast is so critical. The AAA projects that 122.4 million Americans will travel at least 50 miles from home between December 20th and January 1st.
122 million.
To put that figure in perspective, that's roughly one-third of the entire U.S. population making a major trip.
And that makes this the busiest year-end travel period on record.
Officially, yes.
And air travel is truly leading the charge in this surge. And that's where the weather chaos translates most quickly into human misery.
Absolutely. Domestic air travel is projected to hit a record high of 8.03 million travelers this holiday season. This is the first time that number has exceeded 8 million domestic flyers during this specific year-end period.
So the system is already at its breaking point, even with perfect weather.
Exactly. When air traffic control systems, airport infrastructure, and airline staffing are already operating at near 100% capacity, any significant weather event instantly throws the entire operation into gridlock.
When should travelers brace for the absolute worst crowds at the airports? We need to give them some practical advice.
Well, the busiest days for air travel were the Friday before Christmas, December 19th, as people rushed to get ahead of the storms, and then the upcoming Friday and Saturday after Christmas, December 26th and 27th, as the masses return home.
Okay, so there is a slight lull.
There is. Fortunately, if you are flying on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day, those are expected to be the lightest travel days. But again, light is a very relative term when we are talking about a record-breaking volume of 8 million domestic flyers.
How will the extreme weather in the West translate into air travel disruption across the entire country? Because that ripple effect is what truly strands people, and that starts with LAX.
It creates a direct massive threat to the major Western air hubs. Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, is set for a huge increase in traffic, but it's simultaneously right in the path of that atmospheric river. We expect the storm to impact LAX operations dramatically. It may not shut down completely, but high winds and low visibility will necessitate mandatory slowing of arrivals and departures.
So widespread delays are pretty much a guarantee?
It seems likely, yes. Denver International, DNN, is also bracing for packed terminals amidst the forecast warmth and high volume, especially as a crucial connecting point between the coasts.
What about the connection hubs? The traveler's journey so often depends on a smooth connection through the massive airports in the middle of the country.
And that's where the risk shifts immediately, to the connectivity between the hubs and the destinations. The top domestic destinations this year are all warm locales: Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Anaheim, Los Angeles, Honolulu, and Tampa.
And they are all fed by hubs like Atlanta and Dallas.
Right. They're fed by major connection hubs further east, particularly Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson, ATL, and Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW.
And DFW is expecting 80-degree heat. What does that do to operations?
Well, while it avoids ice and snow, DFW will be dealing with the operational strain of high heat on massive volume. Tarmac temperatures can be even higher than the air temperature, which can stress ground crews and aircraft electronics. But more critically, the huge volume of delayed inbound flights from the storm-hit West Coast will quickly backlog the systems at ATL and DFW.
Causing a cascading failure across the country.
Exactly. ATL often sees over 200,000 passengers a day. Any weather disturbance, no matter how local, can push that terminal past its breaking point.
So if a flight originating in Seattle or San Francisco is delayed or canceled due to the storm, how quickly will that impact someone flying from, say, Nashville to Orlando?
The impact is almost immediate. Most major airlines operate on a spoken hub model. That means the aircraft itself is likely needed for the next leg, often a cross-country flight. If an aircraft is stuck at LAX due to wind and rain, the flight it was supposed to operate 4 hours later from DFW to Orlando is now missing its plane.
And in a high-volume scenario like this, there are no spare aircraft or spare flight crews available.
Not really. That's why you need to be hyper-aware that a flood warning 2,000 miles away can still ruin your holiday plans.
With ATL, DFW, and Nashville International BNA all expecting record crowds, what is the essential practical preparation advice for those traveling through these connection points?
Preparation is absolutely key. Expect crowded terminals, packed flights, and inevitable delays. The airlines and airports are all repeating the same advice. Arrive at least 2 hours early for domestic flights and 3 hours for international.
And even that might not be enough.
It might not. But more importantly, you should download and check your airline's app constantly. Look into trip insurance and have a Plan B route or accommodation ready. Because waiting on standby is not a strategy that works when 122 million people are traveling.
Finally, let's look ahead to the New Year's transition. We've been focused on the warmth, but that massive warm ridge can't last forever, especially with La Nina influencing the broader pattern. What happens as we head into the last week of 2025?
The pattern is expected to pivot sharply right after Christmas. The atmospheric pressure ridge finally breaks down, and forecasters are expecting a significant temperature tumble to start the week of December 29th across the Midwest and East.
Following that initial record-breaking heat wave,
Right. So if you traveled out to Dallas for the 80-degree Christmas, your trip home a few days later might require a heavy coat.
what does that mean for New Year's Eve celebrations across the major cities? Will the cold air arrive in time to make things icy, or will the persistent wet pattern cause trouble?
For New Year's Eve itself, we are still tracking multiple developing storms that could impact celebrations, particularly from New York City all the way to Seattle.
So Seattle and Portland are still wet.
Unlikely to catch a break from the persistently wet December they've experienced. Rain is expected right around the start of the new year.
But the Southwest looks good.
For those wanting mild weather, Phoenix, Los Angeles, and San Diego are forecast to have some of the best weather for outdoor celebrations. Dry and mild as that West Coast storm finally moves out.
What about South Florida?
We need to watch the timing of that cold air closely. Even South Florida, a top destination like Miami, is expected to see the influence of that breaking ridge. Arctic air is forecast to hit that area right around New Year's Eve.
For how long?
The cool down should only last about 2 days before temperatures quickly rebound.
And what about road travel warnings for those driving across the Midwest after Christmas? The pivot from 70 degrees to freezing can create extremely dangerous driving conditions overnight.
That is exactly the concern. The transition zone will be hazardous. You have to watch out for potential slippery conditions, from light freezing rain, sleet, or snow late Christmas night, from North Dakota into northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Black ice becomes a major threat.
When rain or very mild air precedes a sharp cold front, any residual moisture on the pavement can freeze almost instantly when the temperature tumbles. It leads to black ice and immediate road chaos. It's a major final hurdle for holiday travelers trying to get home safely.
So, to summarize the key takeaway for you, our listener, we are witnessing an absolutely unprecedented holiday season, defined by a massive weather divergence across the continental United States. We have high-end flooding and a rare tornado threat in the west, caused by an intense atmospheric river colliding with a record-breaking, climate-enhanced heat wave in the central and eastern states. All of this chaos is driven by the amplified La Nina pattern and the persistent long-term warming trends confirmed by climate researchers, and it's unfolding as a record 122 million Americans try to travel.
This extreme contrast, driven by that atmospheric wave pattern, really highlights the intense volatility in our climate today. And while we expect a brief Arctic snap to hit the Midwest and East around the New Year's transition, models are already suggesting that the pattern will rebound quickly.
So the warmth comes back.
The first half of January, which is typically the coldest time of the year, is expected to turn warmer than average across much of the country once again, especially east of the Rockies.
That potential for continued warmth and snow shortfalls well into February is a significant provocative thought. It reinforces the long-term trend seen in 2025's heat records and suggests that the traditional depths of winter may be increasingly elusive outside of the core northern wet zones.
That's the crucial insight. It means that while you may get temporary winter relief, the climate signal for consistent warmth remains dominant.
We're no longer just measuring the weather, we are measuring the volatility and the long-term shift.
That's right.
You've been listening to Meteorology Matters, created by meteorologist Rob Jones. We want to hear from you. What stands out to you about this chaotic forecast, and how is it impacting your holiday travel plans? Don't stay quiet, jump on our socials and let us know what you think.
Be sure to like, follow, drop a comment, and rate the podcast. You can follow meteorologist Rob Jones on Instagram at meteorologist, on TikTok at TV Meteorologist, and on YouTube, follow Rob Jones Hurricane, where you can also find the Meteorology Matters podcast playlist.
Thanks for listening, and remember, the weather always matters. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all.